Earlier today, Xbox and Bethesda hosted the Developer Direct, the first of what will hopefully be a regular new event where we hear directly from the devs on games and get to see a bit more of them. Not just some CGI trailer nonsense, but some actual gameplay, at least for the most part. During this, we got updates on a variety of games, but also a complete surprise appearance from Bethesda and even a surprise game release, which is kind of crazy. So in this video, of course, I want to give my thoughts on the new event format overall. But one of the other pretty interesting things about this event is some of the new reveals, some of the surprises we got may have confirmed some past leaks, and some of these pertain to Starfield. We may have gotten a much better clue as to what's happening with Bethesda and Starfield in the future as a result, so we'll cover all of that. And I know, I hear you, there is a serious struggle going on. All of us just want to play Starfield. Unfortunately, we can't, and we don't even know when it's coming out. But what you can actually play is today's video sponsor, Star Trek Fleet Command. Star Trek Fleet Command is a completely free-to-play, open-world MMO. Here, you'll be in command of your own star base. You'll be able to deploy fleets of ships to expand your territory, gain resources, or even just take down rivals. And it's going to satiate that space game itch we all have. During this, you're going to be able to work with some of the most iconic characters from Star Trek. Fleet Commanders is a brand new feature to the game. You'll build this fancy new command center where Kirk, Spock, or even Locutus of Borg can take over, and you get all kinds of benefits. But the Borg have returned in an even bigger way. Borg Assimilation Part 1 has begun with a new quest where you help Hugh the Borg with a revenge plot against the Collective. This will involve all kinds of familiar characters, and you'll have to stop the Borg from trying to take our own technology. So don't wait, because the Borg are back in Star Trek Fleet Command, and Star Trek Fleet Command is available for free on iOS, Android, and Windows. Download right now using my link or by scanning the QR code and join the fight. But first, just highlighting the Developer Direct Showcase overall, I personally loved this event. The theme overall was more of an almost office or tech vibe to it. It opened up with a bunch of mouse cursors from all of the various companies scrolling around, as well as these office copier sound effects playing in the background. That's not a secret message or anything, right? I don't know though, all that's fun and cool. The actual showcase part I thought was really well done. It was honestly almost formatted like one of my videos, which is perhaps why I liked it so much. One of the devs from the various studios would come up and talk about a game, and really specifically talk about one feature of that game. And then in the background, you would see some gameplay of that, but then also some beauty shots of just kind of panning around the game. But really, there was a heavy focus on actually showing the game aspect they were talking about in that moment. And a lot of this was actual gameplay. Sometimes the HUD was off, but there was very little use of CG trailers or just super pretty panning shots that are uninformative. As well as it really did feel like each of the games that were showcased did have a good amount of time dedicated to it. Nothing in the event felt rushed, and I felt like we could really see and hear about these gameplay features. There was a sizable amount of new info shared all throughout this, and overall I thought this was a mint new format. It's something I truly hope Bethesda and Xbox return to. I'd love to see 2 or 3 of these developer directs a year in addition to the typical E3, and in general I think they did a good job at letting us hear from devs with little fluff. A lot of what we heard was actually valuable information, except for Forza. For whatever reason, that game had a lot of, oh, these clouds are the most HD clouds we have ever done in a video game. And Forza was the only game to not actually get a release date, so perhaps there's something else going on there. Although, as I'm sure many of you are wondering, what happened to Starfield? Well, Starfield wasn't at this event directly, but we knew that. Starfield getting its own dedicated event at some point, and Bethesda Game Studios in general didn't really have a concrete presence, but we did get some comments about that future Starfield event from Xbox and Bethesda, where they did say, as announced previously, in order to dedicate the proper amount of time to a deep dive into Bethesda Game Studios Starfield, a standalone show is in the works. In addition to this, our teams are working hard and look forward to sharing even more of what is next for our fans when we return to Los Angeles for our yearly showcase this summer, which has confirmed that we are likely to see yet another early June showcase from Xbox and Bethesda, maybe even back in person at E3, because apparently E3 is really coming back this year, for real. And I think a proper confirmation that E3, or at least something like E3, is coming back likely in June, does actually give us a pretty good indication as to what's going on with Starfield. I think if Starfield really was delayed to the second half of 2023, as many people are speculating, Bethesda wouldn't be doing a dedicated Starfield event. I mean, why do a Starfield event now in the next couple of months before E3 if the game's not actually going to be out by E3? To me, I think it makes the most sense for them to be doing this standalone Starfield event, because Starfield will be released, or at least releasing around when E3 is happening. So they need to do a different event to really give us a deep dive of Starfield. Or at least that's my speculation, and the fact that they officially confirmed E3 after this current event does make that speculation feel a bit more plausible. And again, even though we didn't get any official Starfield updates, we did get unofficial ones. because some of the surprise reveals during the showcase did corroborate past leaks, which we'll talk about a bit later in this video. But first, let's talk about what was shown off. Although I don't think I will ever make a legit video on this game, I think Minecraft Legends looked really awesome. It may have been my favorite game from the event. It almost gave me Age of Empires crossed with Mount and Blade vibes. It seems like it's almost like an RTS where you actually control a singular character to do things like gather resources, scout out people. So you're going to do all of that, gain a bunch of resources, but then also build an entire base as well as full-fledged armies that you'll control and lead to attack others. It's a pretty interesting format that I've really only seen with Mount and Blade, but this seems to be doing it on a larger scale and more with a PvP focus. Because yes, you'll be able to have team members on your team helping you build up your base and gather resources, but also fighting against other human players, although there also is a PvE component with these pigmen all scattered throughout the world that will basically just attack everything. I had absolutely zero expectations of this game, but it comes out on April 18th, 2023, and I'm actually pretty excited for it. And that April 18th release date does seem to confirm that Starfield isn't coming out on that week at the very least. A lot of people are hoping for a April release date for Starfield. They also showed off Forza Motorsport 8, which I honestly feel like if you're a big fan of Forza, you probably left this showcase even less hyped than you were a week ago. The summary of the showcase is basically the game will be even more HD, which, alright, cool. There'll be things like ray tracing, photogrammetry for some of the new tracks. And one of the cool things they did show off is depending on how you mod your car, it'll sound a bit different. So if you have a turbo or an exhaust compared to a stock car, the one with the turbo or the exhaust will sound a bit different than the stock version, basically how it works in real life. But the real question is, can I straight pipe my 90s Honda in Forza? And the two biggest takeaways were that the game would feature over 500 cars, as well as an all-new single-player mode emphasizing car upgrades and online racing, which honestly, both of those sound awesome. We just got no further details on either of those topics. And as I mentioned, Forza got no release date and almost even a bit worse. In the past, we had saw the game was coming out in spring 2023, while after this event, we only got 2023, no longer spring. ESO was fairly vague on their latest chapter, but it was still better than Forza. And really in ESO's case, I think this is more understandable because they are literally hosting a global premiere event today, or they hosted it already. The global premiere event for ESO was directly after the developer direct, so it seems like they were intentionally vague on some features. Either way, we found out the new ESO chapter is going to be known as Necrum, and it's launching on June 20th. It's going to take you to Eastern Morrowind. We haven't seen this location in any of the modern Elder Scrolls games, and it's going to add in a completely new magic-based class with the Arcanist. As well as they launched a new free trial of ESO Plus, so if you do own the game via Game Pass or even just regularly own the base game, for a limited time you can access ESO Plus and get all of the DLCs for free. And ESO was honestly one of the most interesting things during the showcase because it really got the hard sell. Like, yeah, they talked some about the new DLC for the game, but also a ton about why you should play ESO if you like Skyrim and or Oblivion. There's a good few minutes where they were basically just saying, well, ESO is really similar and you could play it like a single player game, just like Skyrim if you want to. And it has those familiar creatures, just like you have in Skyrim. Those aren't direct quotes, but there was a fairly sizable portion of their showcase dedicated to why ESO is like Skyrim and you should definitely play it right now. And you know what, not gonna lie, it kind of worked. This is the most I've wanted to play ESO probably ever. Or you could play Star Trek Fleet Commander for free forever. Although something else you could play right now that may not cost you any money is HiFi Rush. This was the surprise of the event. Tango Gameworks, the developers of The Evil Within and Ghostwire Tokyo, surprise dropped HiFi Rush, which you can purchase for $30, or if you have Game Pass, play it for free with your subscription. It's one of those games that has a particular art style and honestly a fairly unique gameplay loop. Some of you may be immediately turned off based off this art style, but I thought it was kind of fun. The premise of the game is you're basically iPod Iron Man who had some kind of upgrade go wrong, and now an evil corporation's targeting you and you have to fight back against them. Music is going to be a major theme and really component of this game. There's a bunch of custom songs made for it, and the combat is tuned to music overall. So as you're playing through the game, it's kind of like a 3D platformer at points with some combat and even some Guitar Hero-esque moments. The music will be tied to that, and it was quite a bit of fun. I messed around with this game for a little while before posting this video, and if you have Game Pass, I would definitely recommend just downloading it to try it out. Although if you don't own the game already, I think $30 is a little steep. I would definitely wait for some proper reviews or impressions. And in general, I think having the surprise release, the surprise drop, does take what is otherwise potentially a mediocre game and really up the wow factor of it. It makes it more exciting to play it. But speaking of wow factor, what definitely stole the showcase overall was Redfall. The Redfall segments of this felt like the showcase at its best. There's a nice mix of beauty shots with actual gameplay and the periodic commentary from the developers over what is actually going on in the background. And it seems like Redfall is shaping up to be an open world Left 4 Dead-esque survival game that also has skills as well as a core focus on co-op that is optional. You don't have to play with others, but it seems like it'll be more fun with friends. And it was described as the largest arcane open world ever. And the showcase definitely focused on Redfall as an open world experience that you can play either alone or with friends. Here's some really nice landscape shots shown off throughout this, and they described how once you're in the world, you're going to have those typical story missions, but also a bunch of open world side objectives. You'll be able to rescue a bunch of trapped humans that are being held captive by a vampire threat. So basically a little outpost you can liberate. There's also this pretty interesting neighborhood mechanic. As you play through the game, you're going to be able to go neighborhood by neighborhood and actually clear these out. You'll have to clear out some tougher enemies at first, and then there's going to be a big boss you have to defeat to really take control back for that neighborhood. It almost seems like it's one of those experiences where you can play this solo for a while, kind of build up to the final boss fight of that neighborhood just by yourself, but then maybe as you get to the big boss, invite all of your friends on and make it a co-op boss fight for just more fun. There's going to be 4 distinct characters to choose from, that of course being perfect for that 4-person co-op, but each of the characters are going to have specific abilities tuned to them. And in this, we get a nice look at the skill tree, so you can further upgrade and tune your characters to your liking, but also use your abilities to help out your friends, make each other more powerful, or even just use your abilities on your own. But it has this overarching open world element where you can choose what to do next, or even how to accomplish certain objectives. Do you want to go stealth? Do you want to go through the front door, on the roof, etc.? We get a look at a bunch of the weapons that are coming. There's going to be a lot of familiar military gear to even more anti-vampire specific weapons that looked far more fun, as well as a bunch of customization options like finding and adding vampire stakes to your weapons. And one of the cool parts is there's going to be all of these unique or special vampires scattered throughout. So more powerful vampires that have unique abilities that you'll encounter. But I would say overall, this has been the best advertisement for Redfall we've had thus far. It genuinely got me excited for this game much more than any other showcase. And I think the big reason for that is the open world aspect was pushed way more in this gameplay demo. It really seems like it's going to be that perfect Friday night game to play with a bunch of your friends and just mess around in. And we did discover that Redfall is dropping on May 2nd, which may be a date that sounds familiar to some of you because this has been confirmed by some earlier leaks. We had a pair of Reddit posts earlier in January. A now deleted account reported that Redfall would drop on May 2nd, an Xbox showcase would happen in January, and even that HiFi Rush was dropping later this year. And this is relevant because they also mentioned that Starfield was probably launching before Redfall. And now with a lot of this post coming true, many have come back to it immediately and shown it as proof that Starfield isn't delayed. It's actually coming out before May 2nd. Although there definitely are some issues here. Firstly, it said Redfall would have early access on April 28th. Nothing like that was revealed today. Although in fairness on this one, it could just not be revealed yet. It further posited that HiFi Rush was coming late in 2023, which of course is pretty inaccurate because you could play it right now in January 2023. And depending on how desperate you are for Starfield to not be delayed, maybe this person was right. It's one of the few sources we have that are saying that Starfield is actually coming out earlier in 2023. At the very least, most people are at summer 2023 at this point. And I guess you could look at it as they did get HiFi Rush coming from Tango Gameworks correct. They just got the release date very, very wrong. But the leaks that are likely going to be even more interesting for many of you is from Whorns. This was that random Redditor, and yes, this leaker is also incredibly active on Reddit. It's not just one throwaway account, but this person leaked the existence of a Microsoft showcase happening between January 24th and January 26th, and even more specifically that this showcase would not have Starfield at it. And as far as I can tell, he was the first person to correctly report a January event for Bethesda and Xbox. And I think even more impressive was the lack of Starfield. He posted this earlier in January, and if you asked me at the time, I thought, okay, yeah, there's probably going to be a Q1 event. There was a lot of insiders talking about a Q1 event, but I thought for sure there would be Starfield there. I think most of the reporting was around a Q1 event with Starfield as the big focus of the event. But this leak getting the date right down to a 3-day window, as well as the fact that Starfield would be absent, actually was pretty interesting to me. And they later followed up that post by saying Redfall was coming in mid-2023, while Starfield would end up being delayed to late 2023. Well, that was the old news, but earlier today, this person did return. Whorns made another comment on both Reddit, as well as a very similar series of comments on Reset Era, where he described how his source told him that Tango Gameworks will be putting out something you can play later today in relation to HiFi Rush. This was posted before the showcase, and of course, he ended up being right yet again. And since that information was true, he described some other things this apparent source told him. How Microsoft, due to losing tons of money on Azure, their cloud platform, wants other divisions at Microsoft to help offset the loss, and in turn, Microsoft is pushing for Starfield to drop this fiscal year. Microsoft's current fiscal year will end in June 2023, so they want Starfield out before June 2023. Conversely, Bethesda wants more time with Starfield because it's having issues and instead is pushing for a fall 2023 release date. And also apparently Redfall is having some problems, but it's in better shape than Starfield. Now for some of you, you may have read that and you're like, oh, okay, actually, yeah, that makes a ton of sense. While there's some other people out there that are like, that's an interesting statement. And yeah, I'm definitely in that second camp. This is a weird one. Like, this person clearly got some pretty good predictions correct. The showcase timing, the date, Starfield not being there, HiFi Rush being shadow released today, but his framing of Microsoft pushing to have Starfield out early to offset Azure losses is just hilarious. Microsoft doesn't share exact numbers on Azure revenue, but lots of analysts put it in the 30 billion range for a single year revenue. And in their earnings report from just a day ago, we heard how Microsoft Azure grew year over year, and although growth is slowing, it's still one of their biggest profit makers. But all that aside, even just the prospect of Azure not making as much money, so Microsoft wants to release Starfield 6 months earlier, that's like saying you're going to sell your shoes to help pay off your house. Azure is several times larger than all of ZeniMax. ZeniMax sold for $7.5 billion. Azure's yearly revenue is several times higher than that. So honestly, to me, it's just a really bizarre comparison. I have no idea what to make of the leak overall. But either way, those are my thoughts, my impressions, my opinions on the first developer direct, or at least what is hopefully just the first developer direct, as well as some of the potential updates that happened as a result for Starfield. If you guys found this one informative, you can get subscribed. With that said, as always, again, I thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope to see you all next time. Later.